whenever you're ready.
All right, I will begin. I would like to thank MFA Director Ellen Mueller and Kylie Van Note, Assistant Coordinator of Academic Affairs. I would also like to give a big thank you to my mentor, Melissa Borman, for her immense and all-encompassing support, as well as the other two members of my thesis committee, Catherine Turchon and Robert Ellis. Finally, I would like to thank my MFA cohort for their invaluable critical feedback, to my mom, my daughter, and to my partner, Rob McLean. Rob has elevated me and my work in every way possible, and he's a very big reason I'm here today. I would also like to say that this presentation is in memory of my father, Richard Fink, who I lost this summer. I hope that wherever he is, he hears this and knows that his spirit and his voice live in me and my work. My name is Shoshana Fink, and I am a lens-based artist focusing on photography, video, and installation. My journey as an artist has included 16 years of classical violin study, 15 years of filmmaking and film production, as well as many years making documentary and fine art photography. These have been my modes of expression, sometimes separately and sometimes together. That said, it is place that has truly shaped my work. Indeed, many years spent in the American West, both in Los Angeles, California, and in Butte, Montana, have been formative. While on the surface, the first is urban and the second is rural, the identity of each place has formed around economies of extraction. In Los Angeles, it was oil and water, and in Butte, it was copper and molybdenum. In Storming the Gates of Paradise, Rebecca Solnit writes, "The mind and the terrain shape each other. Every landscape is a landscape of desire to some degree." Applying this argument, it would be fair to assert that the landscapes of Los Angeles and Butte reflect the desires of those who founded those places. At the same time, living in these locations has also had a profound effect on my own inner terrain. In fact, Los Angeles and Butte have both formed a landscape of desire within me, creating a drive to make work that reflects on how environments are constructed and utilized by those who inhabit them. Indeed, it is these lived experiences that have helped me formulate the visual language of my practice. My work explores states of entanglement, specifically the relationship between human beings and the environment. In quantum physics, entanglement describes a phenomenon in which two or more objects are connected in such a way that they can be thought of as a single system. Yet despite attempts to the contrary, contemporary society is all too often characterized by fragmentation, alienation, and barrier making. Ironically, even when we are connected, we often feel apart. Thus, at its heart, my creative practice speaks to and struggles with these quandaries. Indeed, even when connectivity appears to be absent, my work reinforces entangled states, interdependence, and interconnectedness. Each piece I produce not only reveals a story about the environment in which it was created, but it also initiates a discourse about that environment with the viewer. Through my creative practice, I want the audience to ask the following questions. What environmental models are we currently building, and what do we want to build in the future? The studio methodology of my practice reinforces the formal and thematic content of my work. During production, I position my body in direct physical contact with the specific site where I create my imagery. In each location, using only natural light, I am subject to the limitations of the environment. This forces me to adapt my process to the parameters of the elements and the topography in each space. Indeed, creating outside of a controlled studio environment forms a living laboratory in which both me and my subject interact with exterior settings. My materials are predominantly, though not exclusively, lens-based. In much of my work, there is a strong emphasis on still photography, a medium that has itself, since its inception, changed how human beings interact with their environment. In River of Shadows, Rebecca Solnit writes, "Before the new technologies and ideas, time was a river in which human beings were immersed, moving steadily on the current, never faster than the speeds of nature. Photography appears on this scene as though someone had found a way to freeze the water of time. It was no longer a natural world in the sense it always had been, and human beings were no longer contained within nature." In my own creative process, making photographs not only alters my relationship to the world around me, arresting moments in time and extracting slivers of light, but the medium itself creates a meta-discourse about the predicaments of contemporary life, where we can exist beyond the bounds of nature and the present moment. In addition to my still photography, my practice includes sculptural elements, and here are some in-process images, as well as video and sound, and I'm going to show a brief clip.
It's an art project. It's an art project.
The social context for my work encompasses both public and private spaces. In public, my practice takes the form of temporary site-specific installations. These are images of such an instance during which I set up a display box in a farmer's market in Butte, Montana, and then placed myself inside the object. While in the box, I shot iPhone video of passersby and in turn encouraged them to take images of me. These photos are amongst those taken by people in the street. In essence, the installation engaged the public in an experience during which both subject and audience were seeing and being seen, were displayed and displaying through the lens of a cell phone camera. In private spaces, the location is curated and laid out like a stage on which the viewer can be both actor and interpreter. In both contexts, it is my goal for the audience to engage with the created environment, a landscape of desire, reflecting on the stage dynamics of the installation, as well as finding inspiration for new models of interaction. The historic creative context of my work is diverse. The work of Francesca Woodman and Zoe Leonard are some examples, as well as the series One Everyone by Anne Hamilton and Across Windows by Rania Matar. That said, as mentioned above, the historical and contemporary context of my practice is most closely connected to that of site-specific work. One contemporary artist whose work closely aligns with my own is Korean photographer Ata Kim. Though I discovered his work quite recently, his museum project shares some striking similarities with my own. Completed between 1995 and 2002, Kim places his subjects in both public locations as well as in his studio. Every setting is transformed into an exhibition site. Kim sees this as a way of, quote, deconstructing and inverting the public space of the museum by placing the public on display, unquote. The end result combines performance, photography, and an alternate form of archaeology. The museum project, or in the museum project, Kim's goal is to alter the roles of the viewer and the viewed. In contrast, in my series, Please Look, Don't Touch, I deconstruct the effects of display and surveillance in digital spaces. In these spaces, viewers and audiences and the gaze itself can be both outward and inward simultaneously. And here are a few more examples of that project. In my practice, I explore the relationship between identity and place. The dialectical tension or relational specificity changes depending upon the subject's relationship to power. For instance, by placing a nude female figure in the box, partially obfuscated, I can visually express how the female body in that space is simultaneously objectified and censored. In this context, the gender of the subject not only changes the way she interacts with the display case, but also shifts how the viewer sees her. Another conceptual concept important to my practice is the culture of consumerism and extraction. Within the capitalist system, both paradigms affect how human beings interrelate with each other, as well as how they interact with their environment. In my own work, I have reflected on the culture of consumerism by invoking an object that has its heritage in museum and consumer spaces, the display box. By representing this sculpturally, I can visually explore how consumer culture affects us as individuals and as a society in digital space, containing us, surveilling us, and separating us, as well as creating sites of resistance. In addition, by situating one of my images on the site of an American strip mine with a white figure in the display case, I can draw visual and intertextual relationships between consumerism, race, privilege, and environmental degradation. The scientific method builds understanding of the world by examining fragments. While this way of understanding has undeniably provided great insights, it also has the potential to obscure our understanding of the ways our world exists in an unbreakable bond of relatedness, or in a perpetual state of quantum entanglement. As such, it is the goal of my creative practice to examine how we can use this state as a model, one that we might use to build more unity, equity, and peace between each other and between our species and those with whom we share our planet. Thank you.
Thanks, Shoshana. That was great. And wonderful. This is good. Have all this contact information. If you want to put any in the chat as well, so it's clickable for people, feel free. We'll give folks a moment to gather their thoughts and type them up. And I have a question to launch off with. I'm curious about, you've shown many different site-specific places critiquing that extraction industry, and I wondered if, do you have a new site in mind, or what's next in terms of that?
Yeah, I do. I would say like the work that I showed, which is primarily my first year project, Please Look, Don't Touch, is kind of one proposal for site and interaction with the environment. And in my thesis, it's kind of a counter proposal, and the site is going to be in Olympic National Park in the Hoh Valley. So it has no people at all. So it's kind of using a completely non-synthetic, I don't want to use the word natural, but non-synthetic or, biological system as a sort of model of interaction.
Excellent. That's going to be really exciting to see unfold.
Me too. Yeah, I'm excited.
Wonderful. And I'm sure people are just typing right now, figuring out what else they want to ask about. Let's see. Other thoughts? Anyone? Any other questions or pressing ideas? I'd love to hear, Shoshana, about any feedback you've received from the participants themselves about your most recent interactive work.
Oh, yeah. Do you mean at the farmer's market or in the
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of.
In the farmer's market, it was really kind of a combination of like confusion, bemusement, or this is really great, let me take a picture, like people were taking selfies and so on and so forth. And then in the gallery, the point of interaction was the box, which with my partner's help, altered so that it had a door you could open and go in. And most people were kind of uncomfortable, which I'm glad that they kind of had that reaction. It's not supposed to be a comfortable space. So like one person actually said they were creeped out by it. But anyways, it definitely got a reaction. So I was happy about that.
Wonderful. And here we have several questions. First is from Kate. I appreciated hearing how you thought about the implications of gender in the subjects of your work. Will this theme continue in your future work?
I don't know. I don't have any plans for it to in the future. Like my thesis project is really not going to be about people at all. And to be honest, even though most of my work has been heavily influenced by portraiture, going forward, most of my ideas actually don't have any people in them. So, but it's definitely something I've been very conscious of in the past. So for sure.
All right, and then we have a question from Nick. Thanks for such a thorough presentation. I am wondering how much of a photograph is planned beforehand and how much is spontaneous on site?
Well, because of the object I was working with, there had to be a fair amount of planning. So I would location scout first and then pick a time of day and so on and so forth. Paying attention to the light and the direction of the light and even the weather, which that's a bunch of improvisation, especially in places like Minnesota and Montana, which is where these were shot. So it starts with a definite plan, and then once I get there, then there is a fair amount of improvisation. And I would say that even over the course of working on that project, that the improvisation became more prominent because I wanted to just react to the experience and to what I was seeing through the lens.
Wonderful. And I'm going to do one last question. I see there's two, but I'll let you react to Dan's in the chat. But the last one here is from Kaylee. What a great presentation, Shoshana. Kind of heated question here. Oops, scrolling here. Heated question. So Skip, if you want to, I was wondering if you could explain how you feel about the stereotypes in and of rural America.
I mean, I've spent a lot of time in rural America. I've lived in Montana, and I've spent a lot of time there and other places that are rural. I think that just like everything else, it gets kind of a sort of simple paintbrush. Well, this is what rural America is. And there's a lot more diversity and complexity and nuance to it than I think a lot of people give it credit for. There are, yeah, it's kind of like, oh, it's all a bunch of Republicans, but really it's a lot more complicated than that. And I found, I don't know, I found a lot of inspiration there. And I don't know, I just, yeah, I think that it is a lot more complicated than people make it out in a good way.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And there's one more question for you, Shoshana, from Stevie in the chat as well. So I'll leave those two to you. And everyone, let's give Shoshana a round of applause. Great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you.